The water hit Preston Hartwell's $8,000 suit in slow motion. Maya Thompson watched the dark stains spread across the Italian silk, watched his face transform from surprise to something uglier. And in that frozen moment, she made a choice. After 9 months of silence, after swallowing every insult and biting back every response, she was done being invisible. Do you have any idea how much this suit costs? Hartwell's voice cut through the hushed dining room of Lawrence, the most exclusive restaurant in downtown Chicago. Every head turned. Phones came out. Maya felt the weight of 100 eyes, but she didn't look away from the billionaire's face. Of course you don't. Let me guess, you didn't even finish high school? Community college dropout. Maya's hands trembled, but not from fear. It was rage, pure and hot, the kind she'd been suffocating for months. The kind she'd learned to bury when she left her law career in ruins, when she traded her corner office for a server's apron, when she decided that invisibility was safer than fighting. "Sir, I apologize," she heard herself say, her voice steady despite the trembling. "I'll pay for the cleaning." With what? Hartwell stood, towering over her, playing to his audience of wealthy investors and curious diners. "Your food stamps? This is what happens when restaurants do charity hiring. Affirmative action placement, probably. Can't even hold a water pitcher without screwing it up." Laughter rippled from his table. Maya saw them. The three investors who'd been speaking so freely all evening in languages they assumed she couldn't understand. Chen Wang, the Chinese tech entrepreneur who'd questioned the Baltimore project permits in Mandarin. Isabel Santos, the Brazilian widow who'd expressed doubts in Portuguese about her dead husband's trust fund being invested with Hartwell. Klaus Weber, the German banker who'd mentioned the Cayman Island transfers that were about to be exposed. They'd said everything, and Maya had understood every word. "Let me speak to your manager," Hartwell continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "Actually, no. You're clearly not educated enough to understand consequences. I want you fired. Now. And I want compensation for my suit, plus emotional distress, plus the disruption to my business dinner. I'm here closing a $50 million deal, and you." "No." The word came out quiet, but it cut through Hartwell's tirade like a blade. The restaurant went silent. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, like a dam breaking, like 9 months of compressed anger finally finding release. "Excuse me." Hartwell's eyes narrowed. "I said no, Mr. Hartwell." Maya's voice was louder now, clearer. "No, I won't be silent. No, I won't be fired. And no, you don't get to speak to me like that." She was aware of Marcus Reed, the restaurant manager, moving toward them from across the room. Marcus, who'd given her this job when no one else would, who'd recognized her name from the Wallace and Sterling scandal and hired her anyway. Marcus, the former public defender who understood what it meant to be destroyed by the system you try to fix. But Maya didn't wait for him. She'd waited long enough. "You want to talk about education, Mr. Hartwell? Let's talk about it." She straightened her spine, felt herself growing taller despite the 6 inches Hartwell had on her. "I have a Juris Doctor from Howard University Law School. Top of my class. I also have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Johns Hopkins. Summa cum laude in both programs." Hartwell scoffed, but something flickered in his eyes. "Uncertainty. Sure you do. And I'm the Pope. You want proof." Maya's voice carried now, projecting the way she'd learned in courtroom advocacy class. "Let's discuss corporate securities fraud. Specifically, Title 15, Chapter 2B of the U.S. Code. The Securities Exchange Act of 1934, Section 10b, and Rule 10b-5, which prohibits the use of manipulative and deceptive devices in connection with the purchase or sale of securities." She watched Hartwell's face change, watched the investors lean forward. "Or maybe we should talk about the Investment Company Act of 1940, Section 206, which makes it unlawful for investment advisors to engage in fraudulent conduct. Or the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, which allows for civil remedies when someone engages in a pattern of racketeering activity." Maya turned to Chen Wang, switched seamlessly to Mandarin, her pronunciation flawless. "Mr. Wang, you asked about the Baltimore project permits earlier. When you thought I couldn't understand you. They don't exist. The city of Baltimore rejected Hartwell Development Corporation's application 4 months ago due to environmental violations and community opposition. The $8 million you invested isn't going into construction. It's sitting in 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, and Panama. Chen's face went white, then red. He turned to Hartwell. You told me the permits were approved. You showed me documents. Forged, Maya said, still in Mandarin. I know because I spent 6 years in corporate fraud litigation before my career was destroyed. I recognize the signature stamp from the Baltimore Planning Department. It's been outdated since 2022. Anyone with access to the city's public records would know that. She turned to Isabel Santos, her Portuguese carrying the slight Brazilian accent she perfected during a semester abroad in Sao Paulo. Mrs. Santos, I'm so sorry about your husband. I heard you tell Mr. Weber that your husband built his manufacturing business on honest principles. Hartwell told you the Riverside Commons project had a guaranteed 35% return. That's illegal under federal securities law. No investment can legally guarantee returns like that. It's also a lie. The SEC is currently investigating $47 million in missing investor funds from that project. Your husband's money, the money he spent his life earning, is being used to pay off earlier investors while Hartwell siphons the rest into personal accounts. Isabel's hand went to her throat. Meu Deus, she whispered. Finally, Maya faced Klaus Weber. Her German was crisp, formal, the way she'd learned it from her linguistics professor at Georgetown during her undergraduate years. Mr. Weber, you mentioned the Cayman transfers earlier. Paragraph 266 of the German Criminal Code defines embezzlement as the misappropriation of property entrusted to one's care. If you process those wire transfers knowing they're part of a fraudulent scheme, you become complicit under both German and U.S. law. The FBI already has the wire transfer records. They subpoenaed Deutsche Bank 3 weeks ago. Klaus's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and the color drained from his face. Hartwell was sputtering now, his composure cracking. This is slander. I'll sue you for everything you have. Sue me? Maya laughed, and it was sharp, bitter. With what credibility, Preston? You're broke. Not the kind of broke that regular people understand. The kind of broke where your empire is built on debt and fraud and the money you haven't stolen yet. The only thing keeping you afloat is tonight's investment round, and I just sank it. She was aware of the phone's recording, of the other diners watching with rapt attention, of the Lawrence staff gathered at the edges of the dining room. She saw Terrence, the line cook whose asylum paperwork she'd helped translate, watching from the kitchen door with tears in his eyes. She saw Nicole, the trust fund server who'd made casual racist comments all evening, looking shocked and ashamed. I know all of this, Maya continued, her voice strong and clear, because I worked in corporate fraud litigation for Wallace & Sterling, one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. I was good at it. Really good. Too good, actually. I discovered that my senior partner was embezzling from a community development fund, a fund specifically designed to help low-income neighborhoods, mostly Black and Latino communities, rebuild after economic downturns. $15 million, stolen over 3 years. The restaurant was dead silent now. I reported it. I gathered evidence. I followed every protocol, every chain of command. And you know what happened? Maya's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. The firm destroyed me. They claimed I fabricated the evidence. They had me disbarred. They leaked stories to the press about my mental instability, my supposed drug problem, my history of making false accusations. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. By the time the State Bar investigated and found no evidence of wrongdoing, my reputation was gone. My savings were gone, spent on lawyers. My career was gone. She looked directly at Hartwell. So when you ask what I have to lose, the answer is nothing. You already took everything, people like you. You and my former senior partner, and every other powerful man who thinks the rules don't apply to him. Marcus appeared at her elbow. He wasn't there to stop her. She could see it in his eyes. He was there to back her up. She's telling the truth, Marcus said quietly. His voice carried the authority of his years as a public defender, the gravitas of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms. Marcus pulled a manila folder from inside his jacket. I'm a former public defender. 20 years in Cook County courts before I decided I needed a job where I could sleep at night. I recognized Maya's name when she applied here. I followed the Wallace and Sterling case. I knew she was telling the truth then, and I know she's telling the truth now. He opened the folder, laying documents on the table in front of the investors. I've been tracking Hartwell Development Corporation for 6 months. Ever since I heard you'd be dining here, Mr. Hartwell. People like you can't resist places like Lawrence. You need to be seen, need everyone to know you've made it. Marcus's smile was cold. I contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission 3 weeks ago. Special Agent Jennifer Morrison. She's very interested in your business practices. Hartwell's face had gone from red to pale. You can't prove anything. These are sealed settlements, confidential. Chun versus Hartwell Enterprises. Maya interrupted, her voice steady. Case number 2024, CV 8834, Northern District of Illinois. Settled for $4.2 million with an NDA. Santos Family Trust versus Parkside Development. Case number 2024, CV 9127. Settled for $6.8 million, also with an NDA. Rodriguez versus Hartwell Properties. Washington versus Kane Holdings. Yes, Mr. Hartwell. I know you use shell companies with different names. Martinez versus Riverside Commons LLC. 12 settlements in 3 years. All sealed. All paid for with money from the next round of investors. She turned back to the investors. It's a Ponzi scheme. Classic structure. He takes your money, promises returns, uses it to pay off previous investors while skimming millions for himself, then brings in new investors to keep the cycle going. The Baltimore project doesn't exist. The permits were denied. But he needs your money tonight because the whole thing is about to collapse. Chun Wong stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His Mandarin was fast, angry. You showed me architectural renderings. Groundbreaking photos. You said construction started last month. Stock photos, Maya replied in Mandarin. The renderings were from a project in Philadelphia that was completed in 2019. The groundbreaking photos are from the Harbor East development in Baltimore, which is a completely different project by a different company. I know because I reverse image searched them during my break tonight. It took me 10 minutes. She switched to Portuguese, addressing Isabel. Mrs. Santos, your husband's trust invested $9 million 6 months ago. Hartwell promised you quarterly dividends of $700,000. Have you received any payments? Isabel's voice was barely a whisper. He said there were delays. Permit issues with the city. He said the money was coming. We just needed to be patient. There is no money, Maya said gently. I'm so sorry. Your husband worked his whole life, and this man stole from his memory. Isabel's hand trembled as she gathered her purse. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steel. You are a monster, Mr. Hartwell. My Roberto built his business with his hands, with honesty, with pride. You are a thief and a liar, and I will see you in prison. Klaus Weber was already on his phone, speaking rapid German. Maya caught fragments. Emergency board meeting. Exposure. Liability. Immediate withdrawal. He ended the call and looked at Hartwell with something like disgust. Deutsche Bank will be withdrawing all credit facilities, effective immediately. Our legal department will be in contact regarding our options for recovery. You should expect a lawsuit. Now wait just a minute. Hartwell's voice had lost its commanding tone. He sounded desperate now, grasping. Klaus, we've done business for 7 years. Chun, you've made money on 3 projects with me. You can't just walk away based on the lies of some disgraced lawyer playing waitress. The lies. Chen's voice was quiet, dangerous. I just called my people in Baltimore. The permits were denied. You lied to me, Preston. You looked me in the eye and lied. I built my company from nothing. Hartwell's voice rose, cracking. I grew up in a trailer park in Indiana. I worked construction, saved every penny, took risks that you people in your ivory towers would never take. You displaced 400 families, Maya said, and her voice cut through his desperation like a knife. The Baltimore project you keep talking about? That's the neighborhood I grew up in. West Side Baltimore, near Edmondson Village. My aunt's church was there, Greater Faith Baptist. Been in the community since 1952. The clinic where my mother worked as a nurse for 15 years. The corner store owned by Mr. Kim, who gave us credit when money was tight. The barber shop where my father got his hair cut every Saturday. She felt the tears coming but refused to let them fall. Hartwell Development bought the land through a shell company. You promised affordable housing, community reinvestment, job training programs. You showed renderings of a beautiful mixed-use development with units for existing residents. The community believed you. They voted to approve the development. Maya's voice hardened. Then you evicted everyone, demolished the buildings. And you know what you built? Luxury condos starting at $800,000. Not a single affordable unit. Not one. You gentrified an entire neighborhood, displaced families who'd been there for generations, and then you had the audacity to put up a billboard calling it urban renewal. She stepped closer to Hartwell, and he actually moved back. My aunt lost her church. The congregation scattered across the city because none of them could afford to live in the new development. Mr. Kim's store? Gone. He lost everything. His business, his savings, his health. He had a stroke 6 months after you demolished his building. The clinic closed. My mother's patients, mostly elderly folks who'd been seeing the same doctors for decades, had to find new healthcare providers miles away. Some of them didn't bother. Some of them just stopped getting care. The restaurant was completely silent. Even the kitchen sounds had stopped. So when you talk about building from nothing, Maya said, her voice shaking with emotion, remember that you built your empire by taking everything from people who actually had nothing. You took their homes, their community, their dignity. And then you had the nerve to call it success. Hartwell's face was twisted with rage and something else, fear. You self-righteous, you don't understand how business works, how the real world works. Sometimes progress requires sacrifice. Sacrifice. Maya laughed, harsh and bitter. Is that what you call fraud? Theft? Destroying communities? You didn't sacrifice anything, Preston. You made other people sacrifice so you could have a yacht and an $8,000 suit. I earned everything I have, Hartwell spat. Unlike you people who want handouts, who blame everyone else for your problems. You people? Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. Say what you mean, Mr. Hartwell. The silence stretched. Hartwell's mouth opened and closed. Around them, phones continued recording. That's what I thought, Marcus said. Maya, you want to tell him the rest? Maya pulled out her own phone, hand steady now. The FBI raided your offices 2 hours ago. That's why you're really here tonight, isn't it? You knew this was your last chance to secure funding before everything collapsed. You needed their money to run. She held up her phone, showing a news alert. Federal authorities executed search warrants at Hartwell Development Corporation headquarters at 6:15 p.m. today. The investigation involves securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and RICO violations. They seized your servers, your files, your financial records. It's all over the news. Check your phone. You have 47 missed calls. Hartwell grabbed his phone from the table with shaking hands. His face went gray as he scrolled through the notifications. No, this can't. I have people. I have lawyers. Your lawyers are busy right now, Maya said. They're being questioned by federal agents. So is your CFO, your accountant, and your entire executive team. Oh, and the SEC froze your accounts. All of them. The offshore ones too. Turns out the Treasury Department has been watching those for months. Chen Wang's voice was ice. How much of my money is left? Maya met his eyes. Honestly, maybe 20%. The rest is gone, spent on his lifestyle, used to pay earlier investors, or sitting in accounts that are now frozen. You might recover some of it eventually, after years of litigation. But most of it is just gone. $8 million, Chen said softly. Gone. I'm so sorry, Maya said, and she meant it. If I'd known sooner, if I'd recognized him earlier in the evening, I would have warned you before you even sat down. Isabel Santos stood, her dignity intact despite the tears on her face. She reached into her purse and pulled out her checkbook. With deliberate movements, she wrote a check, tore it out, and handed it to Maya. For courage, Querida. From one woman to another. Maya looked at the check. $15,000. Mrs. Santos, I can't. You can and you will, Isabel said firmly. My Roberto always said that courage should be rewarded. You stood up to this man when everyone else was silent. You saved me from losing even more of my husband's legacy. Take it. Use it to rebuild your life. Chen approached next, pulling a business card from his wallet. Miss Thompson, my company is Wang Technologies. We develop AI security systems for financial institutions. We value integrity above everything else. It's literally our business model. When you're ready to leave the service industry, call me. I'll create a position for you. General counsel, maybe, or head of compliance. Whatever you want. I don't want your pity, Maya said quietly. It's not pity, Chen said. It's recognition. You just saved me from losing millions more. You exposed a fraud that probably would have bankrupted me. And you did it because it was right, not because you had anything to gain. That's exactly the kind of person I want working for me. Klaus Weber approached last, his expression troubled. Miss Thompson, I must apologize. When Hartwell spoke to you that way, I said nothing. I sat there and I laughed, and I am ashamed. He handed her his card as well. Deutsche Bank has a responsibility to make this right. We facilitated some of these transactions, and we should have done more due diligence. Please contact our legal department. We may be able to help with recovery efforts for the affected communities. Hartwell watched his investors abandon him, his face contorting through rage, disbelief, and finally something close to panic. You can't do this to me. I'm Preston Hartwell. I've built an empire. I employ hundreds of people. I donate to charities. I'm on the board of the Children's Hospital. You're on that board for the tax write-offs and the photo opportunities, Maya said quietly. I know because I reviewed your tax returns. They're part of the public record for nonprofit board members. Last year, you claimed a $5 million charitable deduction. Want to know what you actually gave? $73,000. The rest was the fair market value of your time. Time you spent at galas drinking champagne and networking for more investors. She turned to address the entire restaurant now, aware that dozens of phones were still recording, that this moment was being broadcast live to thousands, maybe millions of people. This is how it works. People like Preston Hartwell take and take and take, and they wrap it in language about job creation and economic development and urban renewal. They make you think that their success is everyone's success, that we should be grateful for their investments in our communities. But it's a lie. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. They don't invest in communities. They extract from them. They see a neighborhood full of working people, people of color, immigrants, families who've built lives over generations, and they see opportunity. Not opportunity for those people, but opportunity for profit. They displace those families, destroy those communities, and build something new that the original residents can't afford. Then they call it progress. Maya felt the weight of every humiliation she'd endured over the past 9 months, every racist comment she'd swallowed, every time she'd made herself smaller and quieter and less threatening. She felt the weight of the courtroom where she'd been destroyed, the weight of her mother's disappointment, the weight of her own abandoned dreams. I served people like Preston Hartwell for 9 months, she continued. I smiled while they snapped their fingers at me, while they made assumptions about my intelligence based on my skin color and my uniform, while they left 5% tips on $300 meals. I listened to them talk about their deals, their investments, their plans to remake cities and neighborhoods without ever asking the people who actually live there what they want or need. She looked at Hartwell, who seemed to shrink under her gaze. And I stayed silent because I was afraid. Because the last time I spoke up, it destroyed me. Because I thought invisibility was safer than integrity. But you know what? I was wrong. Silence doesn't keep you safe. It just makes you complicit. Terrence pushed through from the kitchen, still wearing his apron. His eyes were red. Maya helped me, he said, his accent thick with emotion. When I came to this country, I had nothing. No papers, no English, nothing. She spent hours helping me fill out asylum applications, translating documents, explaining the process. She never asked for anything. She just helped because it was right. Other staff members came forward. A busboy spoke up. She taught me English on our breaks. Helped me study for my GED. A hostess added. She covered my shift when my daughter was sick, even though she was exhausted. Another server, tears streaming down her face. She stopped a customer from assaulting me last month. He got drunk and grabbed me, and she stepped between us. She could have been fired, but she protected me. Marcus put his hand on Maya's shoulder. 6 months ago, I recognized her name on a job application. Maya Thompson, the lawyer who tried to expose corruption at Wallace and Sterling. I followed that case. I knew she was telling the truth, and I knew what they did to her. So I hired her, and I watched her. I watched her be brilliant and kind and patient with customers who treated her like she was nothing. I watched her help people, mentor the younger staff, work double shifts without complaint. And I waited. He looked at Hartwell. I waited for someone like you to walk through that door. Because men like you always do. You can't help yourselves. You need everyone to see your power, your wealth, your dominance. And I knew that when you came, you'd reveal yourself. I just didn't know Maya would be the one to take you down. I thought I'd have to do it myself. Marcus smiled. I'm glad I was wrong. She's better at this than I ever was. Hartwell made one last desperate attempt. This is entrapment. You set me up. This was all planned. You set yourself up, Maya said. I spilled water on your suit by accident. What happened after that? That was all you. You chose to humiliate me. You chose to make assumptions about my education, my intelligence, my worth as a human being. You chose to be cruel because you thought you could get away with it, because you've gotten away with it your whole life. She stepped closer to him, and he actually backed away. You could have been kind. You could have been decent. I would have apologized. You could have accepted it, and this dinner would have continued. But you couldn't do that, could you? Because kindness looks like weakness to men like you. And you can't afford to look weak, not when your entire empire is built on the perception of strength and success. Hartwell's phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his face crumbled completely. It's my wife, he whispered. Then, louder, desperately. It's my wife. She's seeing this. Everyone's seeing this. Good, Maya said simply. Let them see. Let them see who you really are. Hartwell answered the phone, and even from several feet away, Maya could hear the woman's voice screaming at him. He stumbled toward the restaurant exit, phone pressed to his ear, his expensive suit still stained with water, his empire collapsing in real time. The restaurant erupted. Some diners applauded. Others were still filming, posting, sharing. The story was already going viral. Maya could see people checking their phones, showing their companions the videos and news alerts. Nicole, the server who'd made racist comments earlier, approached tentatively. Her eyes were red, her voice small. Maya, I'm so sorry. For everything I said tonight. For every shift we've worked together. I was horrible to you, and you never deserved it. You were always kind to me, even when I was awful. And she broke down crying. I'm so sorry. Maya wanted to stay angry. Part of her wanted to reject the apology, to make Nicole feel the weight of her cruelty. But she was tired, and anger took energy she didn't have anymore. I accept your apology, Maya said quietly. But Nicole, you need to understand something. It's not enough to apologize to me. You need to think about why you treated me that way. You need to examine your assumptions about people based on their race, their job, their background. And you need to do better. Not just with me, but with everyone. Nicole nodded frantically. I will. I promise. I'll do better. The other servers crowded around Maya, hugging her, crying, laughing. The kitchen staff came out, led by Terrence, who pulled her into a bear hug. You're the bravest person I've ever met, he said into her hair. Thank you. For everything. Marcus gently extracted Maya from the crowd, leading her to his office. She collapsed into a chair, the adrenaline finally draining away, leaving her shaking and exhausted. You okay? Marcus asked, handing her a glass of water. I don't know, Maya admitted. I just ended his empire. On camera. In front of hundreds of people. What if nothing? Marcus said firmly. Maya, you did the right thing. Not the safe thing, not the easy thing, but the right thing. And yes, there will be consequences. Your face is all over social media right now. The news outlets are probably trying to track you down. Your life is about to get very complicated. That's what I'm afraid of, Maya whispered. I know, Marcus said gently. But here's what I also know. You've already survived the worst thing that could happen to you. You've already been destroyed and rebuilt yourself. Everything from here is just living. Maya's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. She looked at the screen, hundreds of notifications. Missed calls from news outlets, messages from former law school classmates, emails from law firms, and one text from a number she didn't recognize. Miss Thompson, this is Special Agent Jennifer Morrison from the SEC. We need to talk. Your testimony could be crucial to our case against Hartwell. Please call me. Over the next few days, Maya's life became a whirlwind. The video of the confrontation had gone viral, 20 million views in 48 hours. News outlets called it the most epic takedown of 2024. Think pieces were written about service workers and invisible labor and the courage it takes to speak truth to power. The ACLU contacted her about suing Wallace and Sterling for wrongful termination and defamation. 3 different law firms offered her partnerships. A publisher wanted her to write a book. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. But the call that mattered most came from her mother. Maya, Sherry, her mother said, her Haitian accent thick with emotion. I saw the video. Everyone saw the video. Your father, he's been calling everyone in Port-au-Prince to tell them about his daughter, the lawyer who stood up to the billionaire. Mama, I'm not a lawyer anymore, Maya said quietly. They took my license. You were always a lawyer, her mother interrupted. The license, that's just paper. But you? You have justice in your heart. You have courage in your bones. You are your father's daughter, your grandmother's granddaughter. We came here with nothing but our education and our pride. They took your license, but they couldn't take who you are. Maya cried then, really cried, for the first time since the Wallace and Sterling scandal broke. I was so ashamed, Mama. I failed you. I failed Papa. You sacrificed everything so I could have an education, and I threw it away. You threw nothing away, her mother said fiercely. You stood up for what was right. That's not failure, Sherry. That's success. Real success. Not money, not status. Doing what's right even when it costs you everything. I have never been more proud of you. 3 weeks later, Maya sat in a small office in a neighborhood not far from where she grew up. The sign on the door read, Thompson Community Legal Defense Fund. It was modest. Just her, 2 young paralegals fresh out of college, and a reception area that doubled as a conference room. But it was hers. Chun Wong had made good on his offer, but not in the way he'd intended. Instead of hiring her, he'd provided seed funding for her nonprofit. Use it to help people like me, he'd said. Investors who get scammed, communities that get displaced, workers who get exploited. Make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to others. Isabel Santos had contributed as well, along with a network of other investors who'd been victimized by Hartwell over the years. Klaus Weber had connected her with Deutsche Bank's legal department, which was helping coordinate recovery efforts for the affected communities. The Wallace and Sterling lawsuit had been settled, full reinstatement of her law license, a public apology, and $2 million for the defense fund. The firm's senior partner had been arrested, finally facing charges for the embezzlement Maya had tried to expose years earlier. And Preston Hartwell? He was awaiting trial on 47 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The prosecution's case was airtight, built on the evidence the FBI had seized and the testimony of dozens of victims. His assets had been frozen, his properties seized, his empire dismantled piece by piece. Maya's first client arrived at 9 a.m., a Latino woman in her 60s, clutching paperwork with trembling hands. Miss Thompson? I'm Rosa Martinez. I saw your video. I saw what you did to that man. And I thought, maybe you could help me? My landlord, he's trying to evict me. Says he's renovating the building, but I think he just wants to raise the rent and get rid of us old tenants. I've lived there for 32 years. Maya smiled, gesturing to a chair. Please, sit down, Mrs. Martinez. Tell me everything. As Rosa began her story, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years: purpose. Not the hollow achievement of corporate success, not the performance of respectability, but genuine purpose. She was using her education, her skills, her voice for something that mattered. Her phone buzzed with a text from Terrence. Grand opening of my restaurant next month. Employee-owned cooperative, just like we talked about. You better be there. Another text from Marcus. Drinks tonight? My treat. You earned it. And one from her mother. Your father wants to know when you're coming to dinner. He's telling everyone about his daughter, the people's lawyer. He's very proud. We both are. Maya looked at her law degree on the wall. The one from Howard, the one she'd earned while working 2 jobs and sending money home to her parents. Next to it hung her Lawrence name tag in a simple frame. She'd kept it as a reminder. A reminder that every job has dignity. That invisible doesn't mean powerless. That silence is sometimes survival. But speaking up is how you truly live. Her phone rang. Special Agent Morrison. Miss Thompson, the grand jury just handed down the indictment. Hartwell's looking at 18 to 25 years. I wanted you to know. This wouldn't have happened without you. Maya closed her eyes, remembering that moment in the restaurant. The water hitting Hartwell's suit. The choice she'd made to speak instead of staying silent. The fear and the anger and the courage it took to stand up. Thank you for calling, Maya said. I appreciate it. She hung up and turned back to Rosa Martinez, who was still explaining her situation, her hope fragile but present. Don't worry, Mrs. Martinez, Maya said, opening her laptop. We're going to fight this. Together. Outside, Chicago hummed with life. Millions of people in their invisible jobs, doing their invisible work, carrying their invisible burdens. People like Maya had been, people like Rosa was now. People whose education and intelligence and humanity got dismissed because of their accents or their skin color or their job titles. But Maya was done being invisible, and she was going to make sure others didn't have to be either. If this story moved you, If it made you think about the invisible people in your own life, the servers, the cleaners, the workers who make your life possible, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And leave a comment telling us about a time someone underestimated you, or when you witnessed someone standing up for what's right. Let's build a community where everyone's voice matters. Because at the end of the day, that's what this story is really about. Not revenge, not even justice exactly, but recognition. Recognition that every person has value, every voice deserves to be heard. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Maya Thompson learned that lesson the hard way. But once she learned it, she made sure no one could make her forget it again.